Hi guys, I'm Lisa. Welcome back to the channel. This week I want to review a talk that I saw by a Seattle defendant's side employment attorney to a group of other employment attorneys who represent employers in federal court. I'm just going to refer to these things as the video and the speaker. I'm not going to give a lot of details about who they were, but I will leave a link in the description to the original video if you want to check that out yourselves. Well, these guys were upset because apparently more and more employment cases are making it past the summary judgment phase and finding their way into court. The speaker shares a few advantages that we employees have in federal district court, particularly in jury trials, and he has tips for employers on how to neutralize those advantages. I figure this is useful to us in a couple of ways. Knowing what our advantages are can boost our confidence, and also knowing the tips is going to give us some insight about what our employer's strategy might be. And in this case, the tips themselves are also useful to us, because they can help us tell our story in the most compelling way possible. Now, mostly this video is about jury trials. The speaker says that since juries are workers, they can easily empathize with us. But I think this information is useful for more than that. I think we can use it whenever we have to tell our stories. It's probably true that juries are more sympathetic than federal judges. But a lot of the people that we have to deal with in this process have been employees themselves. Counselors, investigators, even AJs. And that means they're all capable of empathizing with us if we can just reach them with our stories. The speaker says at trial, most employers focus on giving the facts about what they did or didn't do and showing the policies that allow them to do those things. And he says that approach is doomed to fail with the jury because of the way that juries evaluate the facts. But I don't think it's just juries. I think people in general work this way. There are people out there who can objectively evaluate the cold, hard facts. But most of us need a context, a sort of framework to evaluate those facts within. And if the context isn't given to us along with the facts, we'll create it for ourselves by making up narratives, stories in our head about what might have happened. Then we try to fit the available facts into those stories to try to figure out which of those stories is more likely to be true. The more facts there are, the more important it is to have that context. And discrimination cases involve a lot of facts. The speaker uses the O.J. Simpson trial as an example. O.J.'s defense team didn't just discuss the facts of the case. They also created a compelling story about how the LAPD botched the investigation and biased the evidence. So in deliberation, every time the jury talked about a fact that implicated O.J., they also had to talk about the possibility that LAPD screwed it up. It was a great strategy for O.J., but in discrimination cases, I think it has its limits. All the LAPD had were facts and policies. They didn't have a compelling story of their own like we do. One advantage we employees have, according to the speaker, is that we get to tell our story first. So the more we can hook people with it right from the beginning, the less likely it's going to be that our employer is going to be able to change anybody's mind. Another advantage we employees have is that we already have a story going in. Discrimination gives us plenty of drama to work with, so we don't have to create a story like our employers do. The rest of the video is tips for our employers about how to create a good story, and we can use those same tips to make our stories even more compelling. The tips all trace back to Kenneth Burkes' 5 elements of drama, and I'm going to cover those very briefly here, but I'll also link to some more information in the description in case you want to read up on it. Burkes says that every good story has 5 things. The first is the scene, not just the physical setting, but also the emotional one. For instance, at the time that my boss was refusing to discuss reasonable accommodations with me, I was struggling with a lot of the same physical symptoms that I'd watched my grandmother struggle with a few months before she died of pancreatic cancer. I had a tumor on my pancreas. Doctors thought it was benign, but they didn't know for sure. I thought there was a good chance I could be dying. That's where my head was when my boss was playing games with my health. So that's the scene I set when I was telling my story at my hearing. And I think that made it really clear how cruel my boss's games really were. Element 2 is the acts themselves. In a discrimination case, the acts that we want to talk about are the discrimination. What they did, how it was illegal, and how it affected us. Part 3 is the actors. Who are the other people involved? There were 2 main actors in my story, my very powerful boss, and the timid diversity manager who was afraid of her. Part 4 is the agency. And I'm not talking about a federal agency here. I'm talking about all the little tricks that our employers use to try to get us to bend to their will. It's their methods and tactics. like the bogus disciplinary actions, the veiled threats, the microaggressions. Sharing that kind of stuff makes it a lot easier for people to imagine what you went through on a day-to-day basis. And part 5 is the purpose, why you think they did it. Well, for me, I think my powerful boss just wanted to show me how powerful she was. She did that. And I think the diversity manager wanted to make her happy, way more than she wanted to help me exercise my rights. And of course, the real power in our story is how well these elements mesh to create a credible, compelling story. And of course, our story should be ours. That means we don't have to worry about being objective here. Our employer's going to get their chance to tell their side. This speaker knows what he's talking about. It is important to have a good story. If we want people to see our side, they have to be able to put themselves in our shoes. If we can paint a picture that helps them do that, we can prevail. Good luck telling your stories. I'll see you next time. Till then, take care and hang in. Fight smart,